Hello, everybody. My name is Maya Rose, and you are listening to the newest episode of Thorn and Thistle, the podcast where we navigate life's thorny moments involving identity, music, culture, and the pursuit of joy in an intersectional context. Welcome back. And if you're new, welcome. I am so happy to have you join me on this fantastic, absolutely gorgeous, marvelous day. I hope that you're somewhere comfortable and that you're ready to delve deep into today's topic. Today's topic is Julia Bullock, or should I say a variety of topics with Julia Bullock. We talk about her, Julia Bullock, the classical singer, her journey to where she is now and how her education has informed her musical practice as it is today. We talk a little bit about spirituality and the community of music. We talk about being Black women in music. We talk about Blackness in music and finding that identity. We talk about the opera and classical music industry for singers and young artists and just the future of equity in this field. It is a great conversation that I just woke up, honestly. So I'm a bit rambly in this podcast, but it's okay. I hope you guys still love me and that you don't think I am a dum-dum. But I think that it was such a valuable conversation with Miss Bullock, and I think that she just has so much to offer the world, and I think we just had a really good conversation, so I'd like for you guys to get into it. I should say, so I let this woman say my name wrong for almost an hour, and I'm so sorry. I am so sorry. She was calling me Myra. Okay, you're gonna hear her refer to me as Myra, and that's fine. A lot of people that I grew up with, a lot of my grandparents have called me Myra, so I was just kind of comfortable being called Myra. And I did not correct her, and I should have, because I think she felt really bad, so I feel bad about that, but don't worry about it. It's totally fine. But you're gonna hear her call me Myra. Now you know. Honestly, she might have been channeling my late grandmother, who almost consistently and only called me Myra, which is why I didn't even really notice, to be honest. So yeah, that's just the disclaimer on that. Also, there are a few internet connectivity issues, so there are a couple of moments where Miss Bullock just kind of comes in and out, but I think that you're able to get her idea, and I think I'm going to edit it in a way that will make it make sense if there is something in particular that I think might be missed, but I think everything came out pretty clearly. So just so you know, those are the two things you should know before watching this episode or listening to this episode, whatever platform that you're on. And now, before we get into that, we have to go, of course, through the bramble. Mwah. Hello, welcome to the bramble. All right, guys, today on the bramble, I'm going to discuss anti-Blackness, internalized anti-Blackness, because we didn't get to touch on, me and Julia Bullock talked a bit about this when we were talking about her journey with her identity, growing up in a mixed background, but with a white family, and sort of discovering a connection to Black artists after college and realizing the reality of being considered a Black artist, being considered the young Black soprano or whatever the case may be, and that being your moniker. What I find interesting is that, you guys may or may not know that I am also a classical singer. And, as a Black singer, you go in and you hope that you won't be judged or considered, oh, that's the Black singer. For years, I didn't really get to share this, but I just wanted to share that I held a lot of anti-Blackness since I was a young person, to that I'm still honestly working out today. And, when I started leaning into classical music, which is an art form in the West in America that is particularly white. It is one of like, you know, most music in America has black origins, to be honest. A lot of techno, rock and roll, hip hop, country, pop music, it all sort of leads back to black American music and black music in general, black diasporic music. But opera is pretty white. It's pretty white. And so we are existing in a space that is a bit foreign to our ancestry, our heritage. And so when I got into this thing, it's so easy to want to, like, it's so easy for people in the industry to mark you as the black blank or the next Leontine Price or Jesse Norman or whoever that is the last black singer that they cared about. They will connect you to that without your permission or your consent. Before you even really have a chance to make a mark as a person, you are already pigeonholed. So there's this desire of a lot of black singers to sort of distance themselves from this black identity, honestly, because it's the idea that it will make it easier for us to navigate these predominantly white spaces, and it doesn't necessarily. We end up suppressing a lot of internalized anti-blackness and shame around our blackness, being very apologetic about being black in these spaces and what that actually brings to the creative arts industry. And honestly, you know, being a black performer, being a black musician in these predominantly white spaces can be such a boon to a performer because we bring our experiences and into the interpretation and into the music. And I definitely see a lot of black singers do this in such a beautiful, amazing way. But we are often asked to prioritize being a singer over being a black person, or like reconstruct our ideas of identity so that they are less loud and less, they don't take up as much space so that people don't feel uncomfortable. And I think a lot of black people in general, we're often asked to make, you know, white culture, white people feel comfortable with our presence. And that is very true in the classical music sphere. I know for myself, my first or second year at the University of Georgia, my first or second year, like actually pursuing classical music in any way. I hadn't really done anything prior to this. I didn't want people to see me as the girl who sang spirituals, the black girl. Oh, she sings spirituals well. And so I noticed that I was singing more and more spirituals, and traditionally, and like black composed music, but mostly spirituals. And I was like, I told my voice teacher, I don't want to sing spirituals. I want to sing in Italian. I want to sing in French. I want to sing in German. I want to sing in these languages just like the other students who are white. And they're not singing spirituals. They're not being categorized by their race or ethnicity, and they're able to have the freedom to do whatever they want and to create and explore and not have to be pigeonholed into you sing this because you are brown. And my experience was that a lot of the times people would see me and they'd be like, oh, you'd be great in Porgy and Bess, or you'd be great in singing Swing Low, or whatever the case may be, Ride on King Jesus. And those are wonderful, wonderful, wonderful pieces and arrangements. And there's a lot of good that comes out of spirituals. Don't get me wrong. I love spirituals, but I also hated the idea that I could only sing spirituals. And so for a year, I was like, I'm not singing spirituals at all. They will not be able to tell me that this is all that I can do. But it's so upsetting that the onus comes on the singer, on us, to sort of rebuke this narrative that is being put onto us. As singers of color, we are often pigeonholed in ways that white singers are not. And so not only are we having to navigate these spaces that are already complicated and already really tough and cutthroat, but we're also sort of just trying to figure out how to be individuals before people start putting their own perceptions and presumptions onto us. And so, yeah, I went through this period of trying to find my identity as a singer and as a black singer. And I'm not against being considered a Black singer because that is a fact. I am indeed Black and a singer, but that is not all I am. And that is not a descriptor of who I am when I walk into an audition room. I am not the Black singer. I am not a Black singer. Being a Black singer doesn't mean anything in particular, is what I'm trying to say. There's no necessary meaning behind, oh, that is a Black singer. Like, that's just an observation. So I would like that to be more of an observation in this world. And I want other people, if they're going to be calling me a Black singer, I want other people to be a white singer. Julia says in the interview later on in the show, you know, she she talks about a friend of hers who is a tenor, I think, maybe, I don't remember, and she calls him a young white tenor or whatever. And yeah, because we are often labeled somehow always with our race involved when people are talking about us. It's very frustrating to be reduced to your race. And if we're going to do that, if we're going to be addressing people by the color of their skin, then we should be doing it to everybody. But that's not the reality. What we're doing is singling out Black singers, singling out singers of color and artists of color, and pigeonholing them into this idea that they're the only ones who need to worry about equity, who need to worry about racism and the system. It's on Black singers to fix or to care about. And I'm happy to see that that is sort of changing these days. We are sort of expanding that idea of who can participate in these conversations, who can participate in the change. We're expanding that out to other people, not just BIPOC people. Is it BIPOC, guys? Are we doing BIPOC? I don't like that. I don't like the way it sounds in my mouth. BIPOC. It's also very confusing because I assume it's some sort of bisexual person of color. So it's weird. I don't know. But anyway, that's pretty much the bramble for me. I just wanted to share my experience with sort of my struggles with identity in this career. And for you guys who aren't into classical music and that's not your thing, I think this is still a very good episode for you guys to dig into. There's a lot of good stuff happening. And yeah, so that's all I have today. I've honestly decided, and I'm making the executive decision, there will be no more Flowers to the People. And if there is a Flowers to the People, it might be moved up to the beginning. Let me know if you want me to keep that segment. That's usually, by the way, if you're not familiar with the show format, the Flowers to the People is a sort of shout out section that I've added to the end of a lot of these episodes, but I'm not sure if I really want it to be there. Most people kind of click off after the interview or the main section of the show, and you know, it's not that big of a deal. So if you guys want it, let me know, but otherwise it's gonna go. So there will be no Flowers to the People in this episode. It'll also cut down on my editing time for sure. So that's all, and thank you so much. I hope that you enjoy this wonderful interview with the amazing Julia Bullock. It was just a pleasure and an honor to be able to speak with her, and that she would give me an hour of her time just to talk about, just to have a chat, just have a dialogue. It's not a formal situation. We're just chatting. And I hope you can, I hope it invites you guys to chat and to join the dialogue as well. Now that I am rambling and now that the air conditioning has cut on, I will let you go. Thank you so much, and I will see you in the main show. Bye-bye. Wonderful. I am so happy to have the immaculate, the beautiful, the songbird Julia Bullock join me on Thorn and Thistle today. Hello, welcome.
Hello. Oh, virtually.
Yeah, in different time zones. Where are you again?
I'm in Munich, Germany.
Munich. Are you doing any work up there? Or is that where you're based?
This is where I'm based now. I moved last July, and but I've been in Munich. I flew back from New York City on March 13th, right as the borders were starting to close.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah.
Every day I'm reminded. Sometimes I forget. I stay inside. I live in a 1-bedroom apartment. It's just me and my cat. Every day I am reminded that we are living in a global pandemic, a civil rights movement. All these things are happening, and meanwhile, I'm just like, is it Tuesday?
It's very funny. I went from before the global pandemic erupted. I went from not dealing with any days of the week and only thinking about dates, and now I'm back to like I feel like back in school days of oh
Yeah,
yeah, and
that's how I
it's
feel.
very
Well, I have my day job is essentially a scheduling agent, so I'm
yes.
constantly aware of the date. And so I feel like I'm at school because on every every time I type something, it has to include 8/11/2020 or whatever the case may be. And I mean, for the first 3 months of this whole thing, I was dazed. I did not know what was going on. And actually, it cut right into like right as soon as things. I go to University of Michigan. I'm a master's student there,
Right.
and right as things were starting to get off with all these performances, everything just sort of shut down, and all the summer
Hmm.
performances have been canceled. Has anything that you've been a part of that you were like looking forward to been either thrown up into the air or canceled or any of those things?
Yeah, just about I mean everything. Everything was, but in another way, it was. It gave me some time to rethink. I
Yeah.
guess, yeah, and to I'm so grateful. Honestly, I'm just so grateful for this time at home because really for the past 5 years I've been on the road and just hopping from job to job and making deep and wonderful connections with the people with whom I was working. But to now be back, setting up my home very comfortably and making music also with my husband, Christian Reif here. I mean, it's just,
Yes.
it's a special, it was an unexpected time, of course, as everyone is seeing. And also it's definitely a time too, but I'm also, I'm enjoying this time of reevaluation. And
I think I can relate to that in a lot of ways, actually.
yeah.
I mean, I was looking forward to a lot of things in the spring and in the summer, but
What
I
did you
also,
have going on?
huh?
What did
Oh,
you have
I
going on?
personally, I had taken a lot of time off because I needed to pay rent. So summer actually was mostly going to be me working on music alone in my apartment. But a lot of the spring things
Ideal.
were the concerts and the recitals and the performances and workshop operas that I was excited about but are no longer happened and things of that nature. Like that was the stuff that got canceled for me, just basic school stuff. But I do have a lot of friends who were like rearing and ready to go to all these yaps, and that's not a thing that happened. But at the same time, I've definitely found a lot of peace. I mean, I can say that I'm pretty fortunate that I do still have a job. I'm still employed.
Hmm. Hmm.
But yeah, it's been nice to have a little bit of time to just reflect inwards. So yeah, Julia, Julia.
Yes,
I
Myra.
love you. I am a huge fan. Not everybody who listens to the podcast is in the classical music world, but Julia Bullock is a star, honestly, and an up and coming name, definitely in the last like 6 or 7 years. Since you started going to Juilliard and you spent 4 years there, after going to Bard College, after going to Eastman, and going to all these really big name schools and doing big things. And now we have you here. And also, not only have you been acknowledged by everyone, like I follow your career, and I'm really inspired by your interpretive, and I think a lot of people have talked about this, your ability to analyze text and analyze music in a way that is very expressive and downright spiritual at times, where I feel like there's something very academic about the way that you approach music. But at the
Hmm.
same time, it is intuition based and kind of, I don't know if you're a spiritual person, but I get a sense of like, I don't know, there's something about the way that you step out on stage and it's very intentional. And I really appreciate that. do you have, what is your approach to music? Like what is your process?
Well, I think intentional is the exact right word. And trying to heighten my awareness. I'm the times when I feel I'm performing at my best is when I'm in this sort of state of communion with everything going on. So I'm not a religious person. And I don't even know if I want to say I'm a spiritual person, but I I do have a practice, and I ground myself in the all of the, I guess, the themes that are explored in the poetry that I am interested in sharing, and the way that certain composers want to amplify that poetry or the messages in that poetry. That is certainly something that, yeah, I think has kept me involved in classical music this long, or classical Western music this long. Um,
Yeah.
but I mean,
Oh, go ahead.
no, it's all right. It's all right. I've just, it's uh, period, because yes, I started studying classical. I didn't start, my interest in music was not um, in Western European, found grounded in Western European practice. So
It didn't start in a like a Western European context.
exactly. So it's I my when I think of the word classical now, I am not thinking about genre, and I am just interested in sharing and investing my energy intentionally in sharing the material that I want to return to again and again, material that I can learn from again and again. And yes, I don't know. There is a, yeah, I guess there is a spiritual element to that,
I mean,
knowing that
I am
you're,
a particularly spiritual person.
yeah,
I grew up with religious parents, and so everything I touch on, I'm like I draw energy from that. But everybody has their own sort of base and foundation for where they draw things from. It doesn't need to be, but
for sure. Well, and I mean, I was raised Episcopalian, so I guess the act of
oof,
ritual was certainly a part of my life
mm,
growing up, and it's very close to Catholic, to the Catholic Church, and all of
yeah.
the um, yeah, really ritual is a part of my upbringing for sure. Um, and I actually, when I was in college, I went through a period of going. There was an Episcopalian church that was right across the street from Eastman School of Music, and I went to the church 3 times a week because I just enjoyed sitting with people and praying. Like I knew that the things that I was thinking about, and also even maybe the way that I was interpreting the Bible, or the readings, the scripture, the doctrine, may have been independent, or was certainly my own. But to know that I was also in this conscious shared space with other people was so deeply moving and so important to me during that time. And that's not something that I continued after I left Eastman, but that is something, though, I am very conscious and aware of when I'm making music with other people, and it's something I cherish, and I seek out that engagement with others. While have
I think
my
yes,
soul being
and
existing, it's like, yes, we're in this
the
shared
community
moment.
that is formed in music what is can be a religious, but I think in a way,
Yes,
like in a very basic, like if you consider spiritual as just this idea of connection and community, that we can create sort of sacred spaces even if they are not particularly religious spaces for when
correct.
we are creating music. And I think that, and I definitely think, I think what I'm noticing in your sort of approach and what I'm seeing when you are on stage and when you're performing, and also when you gave a master class at UM in last fall, I was
Yes, last
hanging
fall.
out
Yeah.
there. I was in the audience. I was there. um, but yeah, I don't know. It's so intentional that it's almost a reverence to the
Hmm.
poetry and to the artistry, and how you can like marry your artistry to that. It's very interesting, and I like seeing it
Hmm.
happen.
Well, I'm so glad. Because I also, when I was in school, I went through of feeling though that I was somehow um, lesser than the creative kind of geniuses, that I was there solely to be used as a tool um, for these composers, for these poets, for other people. And
Right.
predominantly, I mean, when I'm thinking about the material that I was working to embody, of predominantly white men. And I it's not that like the element of white men was not the thing that I was thinking about, but it's like the fact that I was diminishing my own um, value for a period of time while starting to study classical music was a really painful thing that I had to recover from. And I mean, when I talk about this, I reverence now, it's like, oh right, this is all of this material is just it's the same themes that human beings have been dealing with really since our existence. And what are we dealing with? Well, honestly, it's just trying to relate to one another and trying to and find peace within ourselves. That's what we're seeking. So and yeah, basta. Basta così.
Basta così. Uh, okay. Yes, I have my little book of notes. I wanted to talk just a little bit about you growing up in St. Louis. You were raised in a like a mixed heritage background. Your mom is white, your stepdad is white, and your biological father was Black, if I'm correct.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I was researching you. And I understand that you had a bit of a struggle with your identity sort of coming up, and then coming into classical music. You had a sort of, I don't know, personal discovery through Josephine Baker. Can you talk me through some of those ideas of
Sure,
what was
sure.
it like for you coming up and discovering, I don't know, whatever identity that you sort of latch on to today, who you are today? How did that
Hmm.
happen?
Yeah, well, my biological father, who was Black, died when I was 9 years old, and that's right at a time when I think as human beings we are starting to become more, or trying to identify ourselves, and I, because of family tensions, I did not have a strong Black presence in my life from age 9 forward. And growing up in St. Louis, where racism, of course, exists all over the world, supremacist mindset entrenched in culture in the United States. And across the world for sure. But, in St. Louis, it was something that felt palpable and also just insidious. And it was not something that I could escape. So I had great shame um, because I was a light-skinned brown person raised in white spaces, and I knew how to navigate. I had to learn how to. I didn't know how to initially, but I learned how to navigate through white. Um, in one way, was a great advantage in trying to. And my connection is getting unstable again.
Yeah,
I'm
just a
seeing.
little bit. I'm still getting your sentences.
Okay,
Um,
okay.
you learned how to
Um,
navigate white spaces.
I learned how to navigate white spaces, which served me very well when I was just trying to live my life. But along with that came this shame and about being Black, having anyone even look at me or consider me to be a Black identifying person. And so when I went into classical music, and really my introduction to classical music and my love of classical music came through my stepfather, my white stepfather, who came in, into our lives when I was in my teens. And that through recordings and DVDs. But in some ways, I thought, okay, this is, as much as I loved the repertoire, and when I say I fell into deep love with classical Western European music, I did. I became obsessed at age 17, obsessed. And I knew this is where I wanted to be putting my energy and my time. But at the same time, it was allowing me to abandon thoughts about my Black heritage and the conflicts that I had about being considered, viewing myself as a Black person or being considered a Black person. I thought, okay, this is now I don't have to think about this anymore.
Yeah.
To find a place to retreat, and I can just create, and I can be creative, and express myself freely. But within the first 2 weeks of music school, I was being compared by my voice teacher to Josephine Baker. And in that, she said, it was just in the middle of our vocalizing, and at the beginning of a lesson, she said, Julia, you remind me a lot of Josephine Baker. And I was like, well, she said, do you know who that is? And I said, yeah, it was that woman in a banana skirt. And that really was the extent. That's all I knew about her at the time. And she said, well, Julia, I mean, you're also thin, and you have a high, light voice. I mean, I certainly did at that time. And she didn't call me Black, but it sent me for a loop, because I went back to my dorm room, and I was like, well, what in the, why am I being compared? I don't want to be compared to anyone, first off, but why am I being compared to this dancer, to this entertainer who was clearly not a classical music singer? But then I started doing research about her. And I am so glad that that comparison was made, because the parallels between Josephine Baker's life and mine, I mean, yes, she was born and raised in St. Louis. She left St. Louis to go to New York in order to pursue performing. She did start out as a dancer. She had always a real conflict with the racism that she experienced growing up, and was aware of it all throughout her life and career. And, along with her passion for performing, like right alongside it was this commitment to humanitarian efforts. And that was expressed in a lot of ways. I can't say that everything, we all like to tell our own stories, and particularly to view ourselves in hindsight in this one, with this extreme, wonderful foresight. In hindsight, yeah. We like to view ourselves with this great foresight. But in some ways, Baker, and Baker certainly did that. I mean, she told tales about herself. But man, what she accomplished, it's like what she had to abandon in order to achieve what she did. I mean, that is also something I think that was a challenge for her. But these ideas about exploitation, these ideas about objectification, not ideas, the reality of exploitation, objectification, um, um, the sexism that she faced, challenges around trying to find loving relationships that she could rely on, balancing her past with her present and where she wanted to go in the future. It's like all of these things. I just thought, man, I cannot wait for the opportunity to start singing about this.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, I wasn't able to talk about it at that time at 18, 19.
Yeah.
But it was, and so it really wasn't until almost 10 years later. I was 20, I think I was 27. I think I was 26 or 27 when I first programmed her music on a recital. But the entire intention of programming her music was to start with a the second half of the program talking about these themes. And so I could talk about the demoralization and dehumanization of Black women in particular, while holding the classical music audience in the room.
Yeah.
And, one thing that is so challenging about this field of classical Western European music and those who love it
Yeah.
is that there's great judgment always. There's a lot of presumption. And in so many ways, this field is the epitome of what the delusion of white dominant culture looks like, feels like. And it has allowed, because it's all wrapped in this idea of like, we have this enlightened, we have the access, and we are in touch with this enlightened material.
Yes, and we know where you should be and how you should do it. I've noticed that a lot of the singers that I look at these days, that I really am inspired by, you and Janae Bridges, Lisa Oropesa. A lot of people are sort of making, Stephanie Blythe. A lot of people are just making their own paths within the greater context of this industry, but definitely have taken. I heard somebody say recently that, opera and classical music is at best interpretive, at worst mimicry. And I think there could be room for creation in there as well.
Yes, and I know, the singers who I love the most, the careers that I've always loved, they all made their own paths. It's just been very, very recently that I think people are acknowledging there's a systemization that has started to happen with young performers, and the business, it's like trying to just crank out, they're
honestly,
the schools themselves.
Oh, you don't have to tell me, but I think and within the schools, I see a lot of demoralization of young singers, because singers feel very, very, very stifled. And I feel like, it takes away a lot of my colleagues have been having a lot of trouble finding a creative voice while we are studying. But like a lot of people at the school are just like, I just got to get this degree so people like see me or like care about me when I put my name down on a resume or things of
right. It's like getting that stamp of approval, or
and so it becomes more of an obligatory like job to go and to study music for a lot of my colleagues. So there's like a lot of negativity in these conservatory spaces. There's a lot of insecurity. There's a lot of imposter syndrome. And I feel like that's an artist thing in general. But definitely when you sort of systemize a creative field, you get this sort of reaction where people sort of feel like they don't fit into the mold that's being presented. And so it's really interesting.
It
to
is
even
interesting.
say it, I think we're all crazy, but But it's definitely it's an interesting place to be.
Well, and I think it's sad. Honestly, it's very sad hearing you say this. I know I felt some of that certainly while I was in school, and it's been some time, but it's what a missed opportunity, because there are the resources now.
Yeah.
There is actually there's a lot of things that have become codified that you would think, all right, this is going to help enable more and more people to just give them the tools so that they can go out and seek and discover and explore whatever it is that their interests and their passion, wherever their passions are driving them to go. But instead it has turned into some sort of toxic, um, yeah,
Well, it's
inhibiting sort of
the
environment.
nature of the beast is a competitive atmosphere, but unfortunately, within schools, I don't. I think school is for education, and whether or not you're
Thank
competing
you. That is
against your
thank
colleagues
you.
for whatever the case may be, if that's not what happens for you. It's not what, like, regardless,
Yeah.
I'm there. I specifically am getting my master's because I wanted to learn more. And
Hmm.
so I have had a much, like, I mean, master's degrees aren't easy, but I've definitely had a better time just being optimistic and being hopeful and having sort of freedom to be creative, because I'm like, well, I'm doing the thing, I'm exploring, I'm here discovering, and that has made it a little bit easier. But I think a lot of people my age, my colleagues, are very afraid of being exploratory or
Mm.
afraid of taking risks, even within a school atmosphere where I feel like it should be safer to do so.
Yeah, I'm wondering too. I've been thinking even just about the word opera, and the roots of that. It just in Italian, just translated, it means work, and and I had to think like, all right, well, what is my work? Well, how how I have trained, how I have continued to do research, how I come up with projects. It's all because I am trying to, as you are in your master's program, and all through my life. But now it's like in music, I'm trying to educate myself. I'm trying to learn new things all of the time. It's through an effort and a real intention and earnest like drive to continue learning. That is my work. And so if within our business, the opera business, that is not how we are defining if our definition of opera is not, the work is not based in education, like, that worries me. It worries me. And so for conservatory programs to be thinking about the business, which again is not the opera business, that is maybe not defining whose values are not actually grounded in education and learning, like finding revelations through learning. It's like, woo,
Yeah.
that, it's not sustainable. It's not,
Yeah.
it's also just
I
not true.
definitely don't
It's
think
not
it
true.
is. I definitely don't think it is. And I have an interesting sort of introduction to this whole world. As I was raised in a Baptist Christian church. My dad was a
Mm,
co-pastor. My mom was a Sunday school teacher, and they were just the musicians of the church as well. And so that's where I get my musical backgrounds, as a lot of like Southern Black people do.
yeah.
And so, you know, I had no real intentions of being here. I was a choir kid in high school, but I didn't really sing or take lessons or anything. But I came and I was going to minor in music, and I was going to study neuroscience.
Oh, wow.
um, that's what I went to UGA for. That's what I got into UGA for. University of
Wow.
Georgia. That was the
Okay.
idea. And psychology. And then I
Mm.
did, my minor audition, and one of the professors, the only Black professor on the faculty, was reconsider. And that was very pivotal. And I ended up,
Mm.
sort of coming into this. But my whole like thing since I've started this was that I felt like I didn't know anything about it. So I had to like learn as much as I could in a very short amount of time, which I eventually found out that everybody was sort of in a similar place as me.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and the imposter syndrome has abated just a little bit, but definitely, it's been interesting for me because my whole philosophy since joining into the classical music world has been to learn and to grasp onto as much as I can and to listen and to go places and explore. And so that's what makes it feel like, that's what fuels my passion in this. And
Yeah.
I think that a lot of people are losing their or not necessarily being asked to find their work, what that is for them, what it means for them, and what they're searching for in this field. They're just kind of
Yeah.
here and trying to make
Well,
it like the rest of us. And like, there's a balance, and I think we all sort of feel that at some point too, just like feeling
yes.
lost.
Oh,
Oh,
undoubtedly. How difficult when it's difficult though when the reasons for you continuing on in studying something are bound up and confused with I don't know, ideas of like grandiose grand success,
yeah,
and not about this thing that we're talking about with the learning and discovering things.
yeah.
Because how do
I
you
think
sustain, again, how do you sustain that?
it is completely unsustainable, and the days of like everybody just sort of railroading themselves up to the med and then boom bam boom, that's the end of your career or whatever. That's how a lot of people, I think my age especially, I
Hmm.
don't think a lot of people my age know what success would look like to them in particular in this industry. And I don't have the answers, but I definitely notice. I mean, it's unfortunate, and I just notice a sense of melancholy in going
Hmm.
into these school situations, and it's really unfortunate because there's so many resources. There's so many people I've noticed, and the faculty at UMich has been really kind to me.
Yeah.
But there's so much support that you can find and so much discovery that can be found. It does sort of it makes me sad that my other friends and colleagues sometimes, we can be blinded by the whole pursuit of, but
Hmm.
we don't know what we're doing.
Well,
It's,
I mean,
I mean, to
it's
be young, to
to
be
be young, to be young, and also in this time, I think this is one thing though that's so honestly so amazing about this moment is that all of the structures that we thought, we many of us had doubts about the systems and their inability to serve us, and that has now become fully clear. And now we also know that these structures and some particular platforms, they're not actually where any of us want to be heading or want to be. And so we have an opportunity now, like you're doing with this show, um, or anyone making recordings from home, or I don't know, going out and investing in an entirely new pursuit of and I'm joining a new movement, or starting a new company, whatever that is. I mean, there's so many options now, and you don't have to wait
yeah.
for this quote unquote stamp of approval or entry point. It's like, just go after it.
It is really freeing. It's been particularly freeing for me to
Hmm.
I have ADHD, and I also am a person that just loves, I'm a nerd. And so this time has been really great for me because I have let my creative juices just sort of spill out into every area of my life, to where
Yes.
I've just been able to marry a lot of things together that I already liked and have passions of. And now I can just create for the sake of creating, and nobody's like looking over my shoulder. But I definitely think that I mean, it's just interesting. I'm really interested to see what happens after or where we're going in the future, but I
Where we're
am
headed.
optimistic, and I
Yeah.
do think that a lot of conversations that have needed to be being had are now out in the open and we can't avoid them. Speaking of which,
Go on.
segue, pivot. Um, so you were a hot button topic, sort of, a few weeks ago because of Facebook.
Oh, yeah.
And you made a post, as we often do on our Facebooks, um, about the protesters in Portland and sort of quoting their distress about being unlawfully detained and all the craziness that's happening in the world with the BLM movement and all of these different things. And then someone came onto your comments and wrote a comment, and suddenly the world of opera and classical music was ablaze. So can you talk me through your emotions with that, the Richard Tucker Foundation, and what was going on while all of these things, everybody was having all these conversations about you and about the Richard Tucker Foundation, about people being taken down from the board? I should say, for people who aren't familiar with this, the full backstory, I'll probably leave a link in the description to I think a New York Times wrote an article about it. But essentially, there's a big foundation in the classical musical world that offers grants and awards to singers. And the son of the namesake of the foundation made racist comments. Some had said racially charged.
Violent comments.
Violent, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
About, and I quote, he said, "Good, get rid of these thugs, and I don't care where you send them. They are pox on our society. About time someone tough will try to crush the mob before they destroy and kill more innocent people. Bravo to Trump to send in federal troops." And, this is not the time for that. How did you feel about all of this? I mean, take me to the moment things kind of blew up for you.
Well, yeah, it was interesting because a friend of mine from Juilliard, Theo Hoffman, young white baritone. I'll just say young white baritone because I'm always the young black soprano. Young white baritone. um, he just said, I can't believe that I'm reading one of the Tucker sons writing this, spewing this on the personal page of Julia Bullock. And I said, well, wait, are you sure that because I didn't know anything about him. I had no engagement with him up until this point, this man. And I said, well, are you sure that he's, even the thugs that he was referring to, do you know, what are his ideologies? What are his ideologies?
We're reading this wrong. Like, this can't be good. Like, are you sure?
And he's like, nope. I looked on his page, and I said, okay, well, I'm just going to pose sort of a baiting question, and let's see what happens. And what was just fascinating is that he didn't stop. He took that bait and continued full force. And over the course of the night, I went to sleep. I told him to please. His name is David Tucker. I went to bed, and after writing him to please not make false accusations on my wall. If you're going to write anything, at least have it be supported with facts. And the next morning I woke up and I saw that there were several other artists who had engaged with him, also talking about the Tucker Foundation. I did actually, before I went to sleep, I did tag the Tucker Foundation onto the chat just to say, again, not making any assumptions about their foundation at all, but just saying, I think this is, I honestly don't even remember exactly the wording, but something along the lines of.
I mean, in a way, tagging them is like, you don't. I'm gonna say it. It's kind of like a this you sort of situation. Like this you guys is this what we're doing?
Correct.
Um,
And just saying, like, listen, if this is the culture, this is the ideology of somebody who's on your board, and I have no idea how involved he is in any decision making, but it's like one thing that I do understand very much about how decisions are made is like all of these undercurrents that exist in that are kept quiet. Um, they do have a way of finding them, like rearing their heads in what happens, like uh, how the actions of a certain organization, how they run,
mhm.
they end up being realized in some way.
I mean, and we
And
see that very clearly in the fact that since its inception, we've only had one Black singer win the title award. Um,
right, so I again, it was not, it was an invitation to start some reflection. And I mean, amazingly, over the course of 48 hours, the Tucker Foundation, I mean, initially their response was um, disappointing and honestly just weak and completely avoiding the
right.
subject matter. But then they were already, I mean, I knew even with that initial release, I knew already that they were starting conversations amongst the board themselves.
Yeah.
Um, and they, the decision to ask this one board member to leave was already underway. They were
And and the Black
crafting and
Opera,
drafting.
the new Black Opera Alliance that has
Yes,
sort
well,
of taken
and
hold.
interesting, yes, I mean, interestingly with that, like they have been working for several weeks now, and I don't know anyone a statement like the one that they published. Um, Again, I think like everyone was, it was just coming, it was the shared moment of we need to make some adjustments, both from people who were associated with the Tucker Foundation, from artists who were involved with the foundation before, along with the Black Opera Aliiance. Really, I think having a call out in the same moment, and
The timing.
the timing. It was about timing, and um, you know, truthfully, I just decided to. I said what I needed to say, and wrote what I needed to write, and drew attention where I
And
want
you
at the.
pulled back. And I think and you said in you and Lawrence Brownlee and Janae Bridges and Morris Robinson and Russell. A lot of people were on the LA Opera sort of
Mm-hmm,
panel
the
talk, and you
panel.
guys were
Mm-hmm,
talking, and you said something that I really resonated with. That you said, I think before this happened. I'm not sure if that happened before or after, but you were saying like about the performative and sort of words of other people and of these organizations and also of like white colleagues and just people who are not Black out in the world, that you were like being called upon to sort of figure this out, and the onus was being put on Black singers, and it's still kind of
mm-hmm,
being put on Black singers to educate other people and to be like in the mix, but it is re-traumatizing almost to get
mm-hmm,
into all of these conversations over and over and over again, especially when you are being considered the mouthpiece. So you said something that really out to me. You were like, I'm ready to close the door. And the non-white performers, quote, the non-white performers are constantly the ones that are having to clear the air. And I feel like that is something that BIPOC singers and people in general can really resonate with, where we're
mm-hmm,
being called upon constantly. I know that I have been, as a student, the students of UMich and the vocal department have sort of formed a coalition where we're like demanding now that people make these changes, but it has been extremely exhausting for us to be constantly like forcing these conversations with the faculty and with the staff and making these changes, and then they're asking us like, oh, what actions need to happen.
well, and
And
this is the thing here, because it's like we are not, I mean, I am not trained in equity assessment for organizations. I want to assess that in myself. um, But it is actually unethical, I think, for us. We can be making recommendations, sure, but we can or immediate reflections or reactions to behaviors. But when it comes to assessing inequities, when it comes to addressing discrimination within an organization, when it comes to dismantling the supremacist, hierarchical, patriarchal functioning of an industry, that is a huge and insane ask for a group of creative artists, as creative as we may be, as analytical as we may be, skill set as well, analyzing words, analyzing human behavior, analyzing stories and seeing patterns. But the expectation that we could find an answer to it is, honestly, it's beyond ridiculous. As I said at the start, it's unethical.
Go ahead.
And there are people, no, it's okay. There are people who do specialize in this. And so I always am encouraging, and this is the thing that I asked for the Tucker Foundation, like, put together, if you want to put together a task force of artists, great, to go out and find other artists to bring to the attention of an organization so that they can, when we're talking about the stamp of approval of excellence and where that comes from, if you want to get those recommendations from other places, great. But again, that is not answering the underlying issue.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what we have to answer. Because this is not about the survival of our art form. Issues of survival, what has become very clear during this pandemic is that issue, we have the issues of health survival, yes, and then there's just survival of Black and brown people in our world. And please let us not confuse that the survival of our arts organizations actually needs to be a frigging priority. I'm sorry. Like, the organizations that are going to survive this time are the ones that are taking the time to invest in that full reassessment, because every individual is having to reassess. This is where we started this conversation today. We're in a point of asking ourselves what we're doing and why.
Yeah.
Let us keep on that, please. Let us keep on that pursuit, please. And if you are not interested in going on that pursuit and going after it hard, you are not going to survive this time, because the artists are not going to make time for you. The public is not going to make time for you. The world cannot support that kind of delusion anymore.
And I hope that, in removing David Tucker from the board at the Richard Tucker Foundation, I think that it was an important move. I think that it was definitely something that needed to happen. But I also wonder how much of that culture persists with the rest of the board. And I can say that because I'm not involved in them in any way. But I just wonder how much of that is in the room.
Again, yeah.
And he just happened to be the one who hosted.
Is most vocal. Yeah, but here's Myra, I know for a fact that his ideology is he is not alone. And the reason why I know it for a fact, because I have been with other young artists who have made complaints, not to the Tucker Foundation, about people who are on that board, even just in a quite a distant way. I have assisted young artists who have been at or been in the opera houses, and there have been complaints made about specific individuals, and they are on that board. Again, I'm not interested in calling people out, but that is where that equity assessment comes in, because if there is a re-education and the conversations that
I wonder.
Myra, I'm just so tired. It's just It's like if
I
there's an
wonder if
opportunity here. I'll just say there's an opportunity here
you know,
to.
and it's so I'm curious as to
Mhm,
how far people will go for the benefit of all people. Like,
mhm,
will you and your administration and your, because I've been in a lot of rooms where I'm like the only person of color. I've been at a lot of donor events where it has been truly the worst and borderline minstrelsy for me to be there, and perform for these people who will then turn around and ask me if I work there or all other things. How I've been told that oh my gosh, like when I was young, you wouldn't be able to do this, and like it's so amazing how you've overcome and that you're here. And I grew up in the suburbs, and so things are. I've been in a lot of positions where I'm like, okay, well, the higher up the people are, it seems like the more and more you're sitting in these rooms, and you're like, oh, it's the whole thing. So
it's the whole thing.
what I wonder is, you know, is an organization willing to gut everybody who is a part of the system that is poisonous, or are they going to do the PC thing, which is to just take one person down and say, oh, we're doing so much, and then make a task force but never call on that task force? I'm interested in what we're going to see in the future with the actual change. I'm just sort of leaning back and keeping my eyes open. I'm happy that change, like people are having these conversations, because it
Right,
has been a struggle just to get people to be aware of some of the stuff that's going on in this
right.
industry and in the world for the last ever. But I do
Yeah,
wonder a lot of people are, you know, I'm not asking. I feel like I speak for a lot of people where it's like a lot. We're no longer asking for awareness. We are asking for action. We are asking for
that's right.
change, as
That's right.
immediate as it can possibly come, even
That's right.
in the wake of a pandemic. Like, what are you doing in this time? As you said, like the places, the people that are going to make it out of this are the ones that are listening and affecting change within their organizations and things of that nature. So I'm interested. I'm just curious as to where this is going to go.
Well,
I'm
I
trying my
think
best not
that
to get too emotionally
I
invested.
will say I think that those arts organizations, just to continue on, the ones who are willing to actually say, you know what, we are not here to just provoke and ask questions and bring people together. We are here for action. We are here as an arts organization, as a cultural center. What's our job? What is our job? What's our service to society? And as artists, how are we? Yes, we can question. Yes, we can provoke. How are we acting? Some of it is just through the way that we move through the world. Some that is valuable. But for those places that have more resources, for those places who can organize on a larger scale, they must, and we must demand that that they're doing more.
Mm.
And if they don't know how to do it yet, it's like it's fine. It's okay if we don't know how to do it yet. But let's do it. Let's do it. Let's figure it out. Because we have been asking a lot of these same we've been rolling around these same sort of human fundamental questions for so long. I'm done. It's not that I cannot, I'm not, can't have any more realizations about things, but what is what's our role? What's our job? What's
Yeah.
our service? And
And also, I would say that we're in an industry that, like, in a lot of ways, should be reflecting the artists, should be reflecting the people who are within it, and should in some ways be servicing us. So it is really,
but if we're othered all the time, if you're not feeling, I mean, you've said it's like as you've gone along in your studies, you have felt more and more and more othered. Man, that is that is a major loss, and you're not alone in that feeling.
And a
And those
lot
of
of my
us,
friends who are very talented are like wondering if it's worth it, because you go through a lot of psychological stress to
mm-hmm,
be in these sorts of environments, especially if you're a person of color. You
mm-hmm,
know, I grew up in the South. I'm from Georgia, and I went to the University of Georgia, and that school is the worst when it comes to racism, and I'm gonna say it till the cows come home. I don't care who hears me. But there's so much that I had to deal with as a student already, just being a
mm-hmm.
Black student in a Southern school, predominantly
Yeah.
white institution, and then also in these sort of spaces where people don't even really like to acknowledge that there are differences between like the way that they perceive a Black singer and the way that they perceive a white singer, in these same rooms. And so, I don't know what the answers are, but I am posing the questions.
And
And
that's a
um,
start.
uh,
It is, though. It is. And like, I don't think we can't devalue that. Especially when it comes to the arts, because again, there's all of this within the arts world. It's like, it's, it's very, the the lack, because we're playing with a lack with of we're not always wanting to represent reality in the arts, and so, and in fact, sometimes we are trying to show the counter of reality. So it's a weird thing of, again, the sort of delusion and play and not being always super clear. But it's like, what are your values? It's not just aesthetic, the question of aesthetic. It's like, what are your values? How is that translated into your work?
yeah. And I'm
And that,
going to
and
be
as a singer, Myra, that will be translated into your voice.
yes. Yeah, so we have had such a good conversation going through a bunch of different stuff today. Thank you so, so, so much for taking out this time to talk to little old May. I'm really excited for other people to join this dialogue as well and see what comes out of the rest of everything. I would love to go out and see people again one day, go to a live
Yes.
performance again one day. That'd be nice.
Yes.
But
Are you in full lockdown? Just is
no, well, not necessarily. Michigan is sort of like loose. I personally like staying home,
mm,
because I have no real reason to go out and hang around a bunch of people. I also, I live alone out here, and I also sort of live 20 minutes outside of the UMich campus. So like most people I know are kind of far away, so I'm not going anywhere. But like,
okay.
yeah, we're not under a full lockdown. So, I mean, we might be soon.
Again,
Schools are
yes.
opening now. And
Right.
immediately as soon as schools opened, COVID cases went up, and I hate this country a lot. Want to go to Mars.
Wanna go to
Ready to
Mars?
go.
Maya on Mars. Okay, this is good. This is the name of your new podcast.
Huh?
Maya on Mars.
Oh
This is
yeah,
the name
I'm
of your
changing it. It's official. Maya on Mars. Thank you for joining me on Maya on Mars. And yeah, so I'm gonna stop. Thank you so much.
Thank
I'm really
you.
happy that you. Now, wasn't that good, guys? Wasn't that good? I was a little bit rambly, but Julia was spot on. We appreciate a queen. She is truly such an honor to have you on my show. Thank you so much. Virtual love through the camera, through the airwaves. Thank you guys so much for listening to another episode of Thorn and Thistle podcast. I appreciate all the love and all the feedback that I have been giving on this show. Please share and spread the love to your friends. Follow and subscribe, and click the notification bell if you're on YouTube. If you're on any other platform, you can find me at Maya Rose _ TNT pod on Twitter, or MY _ OH _ MYAH. That is my oh Maya at Instagram. And otherwise, just hit me up in the comments. Tell me if you like this episode, if you want to see more of this. Give a like, and yeah. That's all I have to say. I'm really bad at these Exits. This is really difficult and foreign for me. It's like, okay, we're just done. We're done. Bye.